Three-time All-Pro cornerback Jalen Ramsey's time in Miami might be coming to an end. This are big news from yesterday. And the Dolphins GM Chris Grier addressed the situation with Ramsey yesterday, providing a lot of clarity on just exactly what's going on here with the relationship between him and the team.
I will say these decisions aren't done quickly, and they're not taken lightly because we spent a lot of time this offseason working through this, talking through things. At the end of the day, Jalen did not ask for a trade. So we went through the process and just felt that after numerous conversations and then talking last week with Jalen and his agent, that it was best to move forward and it was best interest of the Miami Dolphins and for Jalen Ramsey.
You know, Louis, I can't help but think back to some of our meetings even that we had with Jalen Ramsey when doing Monday Night Football games. This whole thing is a bit surprising to me in a lot of ways. But what is the next step for Miami and Ramsey?
Yeah, I couldn't hear what Chris said there at the end, but you're right. Going back to the times that we talked with Jalen, look, Jalen's one of those guys who really is no nonsense when it comes to wanting to feel as though everything is kind of all geared towards winning in all three phases of the game. Not just his phase, not just what he's doing, but he sees the big picture. And he's a guy who seems like he doesn't have a whole lot of tolerance for when he doesn't feel like things are really going that way. And it just seems like, he would be a guy who maybe would be, really rejuvenated and kind of would maybe welcome a fresh start, although he didn't, as Chris said, he did not request a trade. But you can think of some places where he would really fit. I sit there and I think the Atlanta Falcons, to go back down there with Raheem Morris and really move permanently to the star position and play the nickel and play like a hybrid safety, I think it'd be perfect for him. Absolutely perfect. So I think it's going to be interesting to see where ultimately what happens with him. But that's a place I would keep an eye on if they do move him.
Lou, I love that. And, we in draft time and everybody wants to get young, but Jalen Ramsey, I truly feel still can be a championship piece, surrounded by a team and just plugging them in and playing. And one of the places that we just talked about, Baltimore, they're a team that has always welcomed veterans that have played at a high level in the secondary and the wide receiver spot, but they need help at that position. Jalen would absolutely be phenomenal across from Marlon Humphrey. They would be able to do multiple things with him and Kyle Hamilton with their size and ability to get the football. I'll be interested to see if they would even be in the talks because Baltimore obviously has a lot of things going right. But this feels like one of those Baltimore-type players that will help you on your quest to win a championship as they've been so close for so long.
Yeah, I like it, especially considering it seems like, and it makes sense, that Ramsey wants to go to a contender. DJ, looking at the draft, should Miami be looking to replace Ramsey in round one?
Well, I think that's definitely on the table, but I wouldn't, just rule that's going to be the selection. They're going to focus on that position. There's more picks later on. To me, the offensive line's where you at least got to start and have the conversation. I know they've said Patrick Paul, last year's second-round pick, is going to plug right in and be that left tackle. How confident are they that he's going to be able to take over from Terron Armstead? Because this draft has options for you where they're picking at 13. Armand Membu, you look at Banks from Texas, these guys who could kick inside if you needed them to, and maybe Paul works out. If Paul doesn't work out, you've got options there. But they're going to win games based on how many times they can run Tua Tagovailoa out there each and every Sunday. And to me, it starts with making sure he's protected.
Yeah, I completely would agree with DJ as far as protecting Tua Tagovailoa. If you're going to move Jalen Ramsey, though, to the guy's credit, I think you want to give him a contender, somebody where he can go in and he can be motivated to show up to work every day. You mentioned Atlanta. I'll give you a couple more. Minnesota, Green Bay. What about Tampa? Ty Bowles, he wants to blitz a lot. You can put Jalen Ramsey in a lot of that man-to-man situation. Plus, Florida is a no-tax state. So there are several situations where a corner of his caliber, somebody who's got the pellets on the wall, the Jalen Ramsey, who can play inside and outside, who has scheme versatility. There are several spots in this league where he can play. It's all about if Miami and Jalen have come to the conclusion that Miami is no longer the place for him, then it's about finding where he wants to go. And to me, there's a plethora of places, Swagoo.
Yeah, I think specifically, Boog, you mentioned a lot of teams. Obviously, a contender would be in Jalen's sights. And remember, he's a Super Bowl champion already. I think a lot of times when players get to this point when they play such good football, they want to go somewhere where the team around them, to your point, Boog, is going to reinvigorate them and be in a position each and every Sunday to not only win games, but to make plays. And I can't think of a better place than Baltimore. I still come back to that. Now, this is obviously wishful thinking we hear in April. The amount of points that Lamar Jackson and this offense can put up and his opportunity to get the ball and take the ball away and make plays because the pass game has to happen, it just gets me excited about him being in Baltimore across from Marlon Humphrey and Kyle Hamilton.
I love it. Boog, you live in Florida. That's why, you know a thing or two about tax breaks.
Yes, I live in Florida. Sunshine and no state taxes. You can play golf all the time, Laura.
Okay, thanks for that. Still to come on NFL Live, DJ remains optimistic about some. This past weekend, the Los Angeles Rams hosted their NFL Flag Regional Tournament. 74 teams competed, with several teams punching their tickets to the championships this summer in Canton, Ohio. That included SD Express winning in a thriller 8-7, and HB Conquer, who rolled past the competition in a 7-0 victory. Up next, the action heads to Detroit for the regional tournament. For more info and to find a league near you, visit NFLflag.com. New on NFL Live, the Texans hold the 25th pick in the draft. Here's GM Nick Caserio on their preparations.
I think the big thing right now is just kind of aggregating a lot of information and just kind of distilling it down into a clear picture of what we think we have with each player. So I'd say it's very fluid. Nothing's set. There's no board, quote unquote, that's set. There's no final list of players or like we're, taking X number of players or these are the 3 players we're focused on. Let's say, honestly, this time of year is a bunch of noise out there. That's a bunch of garbage. So, we're just going to go through our process and just kind of prepare and get ready to go for next week and take advantage of our opportunities to pick whenever those might be. Right now, we're scheduled to pick at 25. Pick at 25, great. If we don't, we don't. However that goes, and just try to be judicious and try to make good decisions on behalf of the organization. Which we feel like we've done a decent job of that over the last few years.
It's interesting. It made me think about a couple years ago when they traded up so they could get Will Anderson Jr. All right, Booger McFarland joining the show now. We're glad to have you, Boog. He's with us the rest of the way. Boog, what should Houston be prioritizing in this draft?
Well, it's got to be C.J. Stroud, number one. And if you're going to prioritize him, that's going to start with the offensive line. They trade away Laramie Tunsil to the Washington Commanders. They got to figure out a way to shore up that offensive line, not only at left tackle, but all across that offensive line. Protecting your franchise quarterback, making sure he can operate in the pocket has got to be their priority. C.J. Stroud took a step back last year, and partly because he was under a ton of pressure. So how do you do that? You got to figure out where they're picking is probably the back end of the first round as far as the offensive tackle is concerned. Usually there's going to be 5 or 6 tackles going in the first round. If you want a franchise left tackle, you're going to have to give him in the first round. So if I'm Nick Caserio, it's really, really simple. You trade away Tunsil, you got to figure out a way.
A major piece of news has just emerged that will shake up the NFL market. The Minnesota Vikings are very close to making a big move by acquiring Miami Dolphins cornerback Jalen Ramsey. In this video, I'll bring you all the details about this potential trade, what it would mean for both teams, and, of course, the impact on the Vikings defense. Stay tuned to learn all the ins and outs of this move that could change the defensive landscape in Minnesota. Before diving into the details of the Jalen Ramsey trade, it's important to talk about the cornerback situation with the Minnesota Vikings. The team has already made some moves during free agency, re-signing Byron Murphy and adding Isaiah Rodgers. However, there is still some uncertainty about their depth at this position. This is where Ramsey could become a key piece. Although his relationship with defensive coordinator Brian Flores in Miami wasn't the best, his level of play remains elite, making the possibility of acquiring him even more attractive. Jalen Ramsey, at 31 years old, is a veteran who, despite not being selected to the Pro Bowl for the first time since his rookie season, remains a high-level cornerback. In 2024, he allowed a passer rating of 83.2 with 11 passes defensed, and Pro Football Focus ranked him as the 10th best cornerback in the league. The Vikings already have some key moves in their defense, but acquiring Ramsey could further solidify their defensive line. However, his contract, which includes a guaranteed salary of $21.1 million for this year, presents a financial challenge. What do you think about the possibility of the Vikings acquiring Jalen Ramsey? Do you think this is the right move to improve Minnesota's defense, or should they focus on other positions? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to share this video with other NFL fans. Now, let's get to the most important part. It's time to break down everything about the trade proposal the Vikings are considering to bring Jalen Ramsey on board. This move could make a significant difference in the team's defense, so let's see how it could unfold. The proposed trade involves the Minnesota Vikings receiving Jalen Ramsey and a 6th-round pick in 2026, while the Miami Dolphins would receive a 3rd-round pick in 2025. This deal could be a great move for the Vikings, who are looking to strengthen their defense, especially at cornerback. Despite concerns about his past relationship with coordinator Brian Flores, Ramsey remains an attractive option for the Vikings due to his experience and on-field skills. This trade could also be a blow to the Dolphins, who would need to adjust their defensive plans. Jalen Ramsey's arrival in Minnesota could have an immediate impact on their defensive performance. The relationship between Ramsey and Vikings coordinator Kevin O'Connell could also be an important factor for the success of this move. Additionally, with only 4 picks in this year's NFL draft, Minnesota would need to make a sacrifice to acquire a player of Ramsey's caliber. Losing a 3rd-round pick is significant, but if Ramsey lives up to expectations, this trade could completely change the team's defensive dynamic. What do you think about the proposed trade between the Vikings and Dolphins for Jalen Ramsey? Do you think Minnesota did the right thing by parting with a 3rd-round pick, or should they have gone after another player? Leave your thoughts in the comments and join us for more NFL analysis. Don't forget to follow us for more NFL news and potential trades that could shake up the market. We'll be keeping an eye on the latest updates on Jalen Ramsey and other major moves in the league. See you in the next video.